Good afternoon, everyone. This is Mike O'Malley here with the Hurricane Outlook and discussion for November 10th, 2021, recorded on 1:40 p.m. Eastern Time. Today is the peak of the 2021 Atlantic hurricane season with that, and we have a lot of activity to discuss today. So let's go and jump straight into everything. Taking a wide look across the tropical Atlantic this afternoon, we continue to keep our eyes on three potential systems, or one actual system, and two other potential disturbances down the road. We have Hurricane Larry, which is now exiting off to stage kind of north and east at this point, and is now beginning to make its final approach into the Canadian Maritimes and portions of those areas. And this will impact Greenland within the next day or two and will bring a blizzard condition to that region. We also are watching this tropical wave, which will likely be designated Invest Area 92L, and a tropical wave that is now beginning to enter the Caribbean and the Caribbean and Gulf of Mexico. And this also has a high percentage of development. Both of these waves here are at 70% over the next several days. So we look here at Hurricane Larry. Again, right now sustained winds are roughly about 90 miles per hour. If we kind of back this out here and look at a more zoomed out visible satellite image, we notice that Larry's size is absolutely massive. Deteriorating conditions are already occurring across portions of the Canadian Maritimes, Newfoundland, etc. This whole area is at a risk for some significant problems, especially the further north you get. And there's going to be some very dangerous swells and rip current conditions radiating outwards from the storm during the next several days. And this will be impacting the United States East Coast, the Bahamas, and the Lesser Antilles during the next several days or so. Now you notice that Larry is beginning to rapidly move off towards the north and east, still maintaining a pretty well-defined convective structure, but it is now beginning to rapidly advect towards the north and east and will start losing a lot of its tropical characteristics over the next 24 hours. We notice that we already have the remnants here of Mindy, which is out here. And again, this is now entangled within this frontal system here. And again, you can notice the cool air advection behind this front. So right here, this is where the front actually is. And it's now beginning to encroach rapidly here on Larry, which means wind shear is going to begin to pick up here rapidly over the next 12 to 24 hours as this continues to move off towards the north and east. Again, hurricane warnings are in effect. Again, this is expected to be a hurricane on approach into the island here, and this will be continuing to move rapidly north and east. Again, this will be weakening down into a post-tropical storm here over the next 24 hours or so. But by and large, for the most part, there is hurricane and tropical storm warnings in effect. The wind field is fairly large, and that's why we have these watches or these warnings that are in effect. Again, the hurricane force winds are expected to be moving over the island here and causing some pretty significant swells, rip currents, the potential for storm surge inundation, and the potential for very high wind as well, along with that heavy rainfall flooding problem. Again, this will be moving off towards Greenland within the next couple of days, and this will be providing blizzard conditions for that vicinity. So looking out further in time here, we have two other systems that we're kind of keeping our eye on, and likely a third that will be coming over the next several days. We have two of these waves here, both with a 70% chance of developing. This could be 92 or 93L. This could also be 92 or 93L, just depends what gets tagged first by National Hurricane Center. We notice that, again, generally speaking, there is threat for a storm to be impacting portions of Texas over the next several days or so. Now, before anybody gets all kind of in a hysteria over it, I'm not expecting this to be a very significant system. Now, rainfall, on the other hand, could be quite substantial, and we'll talk about that here in a moment. And this tropical wave will likely come off and turn out to sea as well. There's a secondary tropical wave behind this, which could come off at lower latitudes, like some of the modeling is forecasting here, which we'll talk about here right now. So this is the GFS forecast, the 50 millibar vortex today. The spin in the atmosphere at about 5,000 feet off the ground. And for context here, these darker red colors, this indicates higher cyclonic spin at 5,000 feet up in the atmosphere. Here's remnants here of Mindy, and this is Hurricane Larry, currently moving towards the north and east. So over the next several days, we'll jump here to the 200 millibar wind pattern. This is the upper level environment in the atmosphere. And again, we notice that in the Gulf of Mexico currently, we have this very sharp trough that is digging in, and this is all connected within a frontal boundary that is stretching across this region and providing some much cooler air to portions of the southeast United States. Now, because this is here, there's a lot of wind shear in the Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico at this time, and that doesn't really abate much. Now, we notice that by 60 hours from now, if we zoom in here to the Western Atlantic, there is a little bit of more favorable shear environment. But look what is happening out here. There's a broad upper level anticyclone associated with a new tropical storm or hurricane that could be forming in the East Pacific over the next several days. And that's one of the things that could put a hindrance on any development. If we actually look here at the 850 millibar vorticity, we notice that here on the GFS, again, a brief storm begins to take shape here and moves generally in the general direction here of central or northern Mexico. And there's a secondary storm that forms over here in the East Pacific that also runs into the southern side of Mexico there. Now, again, we can take a look here at the 200 millibar wind. We notice that any storm within this general environment is going to have a hard time strengthening. Again, the outflow is sort of impinging on whatever the storm may be. Again, the next name here is Nicholas. But by and large here, again, because this is not centered directly over the upper level anticyclone, there will be shear. We saw some of that with Ida just a couple of days ago here, about a week or so ago now at this point, almost 2 weeks ago. So we saw this with Ida on approach. Now, Ida, of course, was a strengthening Cat 4, almost Category 5 hurricane as it neared the Louisiana coastline, and shear doesn't do a whole lot to Cat 4, Cat 5 hurricanes. If it's only very modest. Now, in this case, this would be modest shear, but because this is a very weak system, not very well organized, it probably will have a hard time fighting it off. Either way, the precipitation field here in the upper part of the atmosphere, or kind of the mid and upper part of the atmosphere, really tells the story. There's going to be a large slug of tropical moisture indicated by all these dark green colors. There's a large slug of tropical moisture here, and this is where this little tropical cyclone could be. But there's a large slug of moisture all the way over to Florida and Texas here, and that slug of moisture continues to advect over the next several days and just creates a big rain threat. You can kind of see all this tropical moisture being pumped in, and this sets the stage potentially for, again, a heavy rain environment. Now, if we take a look here at the 500 millibar height anomalies, we kind of zoom back out here again. General steering flow. Right now, we're going to have this upper level ridge that's going to be building across most of the central United States. The low level flow here is generally out of the west-northwest here. So we're getting a steering flow generally out of the west-northwest. So any storm that ends up forming again is mainly going to have a steering component similar in the low levels, following kind of the low-level wind, which is generally forcing everything to the west-northwest. So not really expecting this to be something that dramatically gets far to the north and, let's just say, impacts portions of central Texas or far western Louisiana. I don't see that becoming a realm of possibility, given the fact that we have this big Bermuda Azores high here. And right now, our storm would generally be weaker following the low-level trade winds in that part of the atmosphere. Now, after this time, we will have, again, the potential for another wave to come off here, and the GFS is starting to indicate that some development of this wave is possible out by day 5. And again, we can notice here that, again, if we jump back up to the 500 millibar height anomalies, we will have this weakness in the ridge here, which naturally is going to be a progression for any storm to turn and make that connection out. Now, again, the low-level wind here is still generally out of the west-northwest or kind of somewhere in between that. But again, if this becomes a storm for certain, that this would probably turn out to sea given this pattern. Now, eventually, this ridge does reconnect, but we get a series of troughs that end up kind of filtering in, and that could break down the ridge. And if we can kind of back up and trace this, again, this typically tries to kind of just move generally towards the west-northwest like this. A big ridge sets in, And again, similar to kind of the evolution here of Larry in the general direction this may go. Now, we're looking several days in advance, so not everything's going to be there. But again, several more storms may form out of this overall pattern. We would expect that. The European forecast, for instance, tries to develop several systems and even includes a southern branch here that tries to develop near the Lesser Antilles, heading into the Caribbean, and a wave that is just affecting ridiculously far northward. And again, 500 millibar, heights here. Generally speaking, we are going to have a series of troughs, and it's that time of the year where we just get these series of troughs that start to break down and advect off into the northern latitudes and break down this ridge. And this is likely to induce the pattern where storms that form far north just get turned out to sea rather quickly, especially if they get strong. Though we will have to watch for any sneaky waves that don't develop here in the MDR and make its way into the Caribbean before developing out here, because this time of the year, the pattern generally supports storms that would curve back up into the Gulf of Mexico or Central America. So we will have to watch that. Not really overly concerned over the next several days for anything very significant affecting land, but again, we'll be watching. No real chase plans at this time. All right. That being said, hope you have a great rest of your afternoon and evening. Of course, I am Michael O'Malley. I'll talk to you guys again some more tomorrow.